So it's come to a point now with iPhones that every single year we seem to get a standard model and a Pro model. Each year the standard model seems to get the best of the features from last year's Pro model, and this year is no different. So all in all really, this is just a cheaper 14 Pro from last year with a few drawbacks. The iPhone 15 is finally here. Now a lot of people do not like this phone, but personally I'm one of the few who thinks this phone is a huge upgrade from last year's model. Now there's 6 categories a manufacturer really need to nail in order to make a really good phone. So let's start with the design and build quality. Now this is definitely one of the areas that has seen the most noticeable improvements. So like the iPhone 14, we've still got the aluminium rails around the side of the phone. We've still got 2 cameras on the back of the phone with a camera bump. And unlike the Pro model, we've still got a silent switch. But what's different? One, we've got USB-C, which is very nice to see. And we've got a brand new frosted glass back on the back of the phone. This is one of my favourite parts of the Pro models, and this being on the standard models, as subtle of a feature this is, I think it really adds to that premium feel of the phone. And as well as that, there's now a slight bevel on the edges of the phone, so when you're holding it in your hand, unlike last year's model where it was straight harsh corners and it was quite uncomfortable to hold at times, this year the edges are a little bit curved, so it's going to be much more comfortable in the hand. And I've sort of noticed it does make the phone feel a tiny bit smaller. They are the same size, but I feel like the fact it doesn't dig into your hand as much makes it feel a little bit smaller. That might just be me though. Now I want to talk about USB-C a little bit. As grateful as I am to have this on the new iPhones, it allows for a lot of great capabilities with USB-C. Unfortunately, the function of it is exactly the same as Lightning. And what I mean by that is we're stuck at 20 watts of charging, so it's still pretty slow charging speeds. And as well as that, we've only got USB 2.0 transfer speeds. Unlike the iPhone 15 Pro, where we've got 10 gigabit per second speeds to transfer data on and off the phone, on the standard models, it's only limited to 480 megabytes a second, which is not much really. But to be honest, I don't think that's really important because I think the people buying the standard phone aren't going to notice, aren't going to use that feature. So I thought I'd mention it, but I really don't think most people looking at this phone is going to mind too much. Last but not least, the Dynamic Island is now on the 5th standard models of the phone. Apple introduced the Dynamic Island last year, and as much of a gimmick it is quite a useful feature when you get to use it, and it is a great feature to have on the standard models this year. I don't really use the Dynamic Island too much for in terms of like switching music, that kind of thing, but I find it really useful, for example, if I've ordered an Uber or I've got a timer on in the background. You don't have to keep opening the app to see the progress. The Dynamic Island does expand, and you can see lots of timers on there. You can see when your Uber's going to arrive. It's kind of a feature that you don't think you need, but when you don't have it, you kind of miss it. But it's not essential, but it's nice to have. Now, in terms of the display for the iPhone 15, I've got some good news, but I've got some bad news for you. Let's start with the good news. Apple have brought the 2000 nits of peak brightness from the iPhone 14 Pro onto the standard model of the 15, which is a massive upgrade. Now, will you see this 2000 nits of brightness at all really? No. In fact, the only time you will see the 2000 nits of brightness is if you're in direct sunlight and you can't see the phone. It will boost its brightness a little bit to that 2000 nits, but it can't keep that brightness at a sustained level for a long period of time. After 2 or 3 minutes maximum, it will just go back, probably even lower than it was before in terms of brightness, because it just overheats the phone too much. But nonetheless, this is a step in the right direction. What's not though, is the fact we've still got 60Hz on an £800 phone. I understand from one point of view that the people buying this phone really won't care. Like, a lot of people who just buy the standard phones either don't notice, or even if they do notice, they don't mind. But it's one of them things that, even so, we should have it on the 15, I think. But maybe next year. But all in all, if you're using this phone for watching films, any sort of entertainment, everything apart from the 120Hz, the quality of this display is equally as good as the 14 Pro. It is just one of the best screens on the market. And I'll be honest, I've been using this phone quite a lot for the past couple of weeks, and the 60Hz isn't as bad as I expected it to be. I tried the 14 last year. The 14 definitely didn't feel as smooth as this phone. Putting that to a side, if you're upgrading from an iPhone 11 or a phone older than that, this new screen with the OLED panel will make a world of a difference compared to your old phone. Now, in terms of performance, it's great. It is using the A16 Bionic chip from last year, unlike the iPhone 15 Pro that does have the A17 Pro chip. Yet again, I don't think many people are going to notice the difference. And the only time you are going to notice the difference between these two phones, if you're going to be gaming, but even then, the difference is marginal. The A16 Bionic is still one of the fastest chips in the world alongside the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which is in the Samsung S23 Ultra, but overall using this phone for about 2 weeks I haven't experienced any stutters, any lags, any major freezes. Overall the performance has been really impressive. As well as this, the iPhone 15 has seen a huge improvement with the cameras. Last year on the iPhone 14 we only had a 12 megapixel lens, which didn't really allow for too much detail. This year, we've got 4 times that. We've got the 48 megapixel lens that was from last year's Pro model, and that's gonna, one, allow you to get so much more light into the image, but will also allow you to get so much more detail as well. What the phone does anyway is if you're taking a standard photo, it will just bin off lots of them pixels, so you will actually just get a 24 megapixel image, which is still miles better than what you're getting last year. The main thing I like about this new 48 megapixel lens is the fact that you can now use an actual 2x lens, which allows you to zoom in twice as much without losing any detail. And as you can see on the camera app, there is just a 2x button that wasn't there last year. It just crops into the 48 megapixel lens and you're not losing any quality. But yeah, we're getting loads of versatility in terms of what you can do with a standard iPhone lens. Now compared to the Pro, the only thing you're missing out now is the macro lens and the 3x or 5x telephoto lens. But if you do need those features, then you might want to look at the Pro instead. Portrait mode as well has seen a massive improvement. What the iPhone 15 does now is if you take a standard photo, if it detects a person, a cat or a dog, or if it's an object and you've tapped on it, it will capture all the depth information as well. So you could in theory come back 3 months down the line and get that picture of your cat or your dog, and you can change the focus, you can even blur the background even more, but it's going to have that full portrait quality because it's captured that detail from the depth information. Personally, I think this is going to go quite under the radar, but I think a lot of people will use this more than they think. Now, in terms of battery life, I haven't really got too much to say. We're getting very similar performance in terms of how long it lasts compared to last year. With the iPhone 14 and the Pro models as well, I was getting all day battery life, even 2 days at a push. I think with this phone, it all depends now on how long these batteries last in terms of battery health, because last year my iPhone 14 Pro was at 90% after about 6 months, which is not good at all. Now, Apple didn't mention any improvements that they'd made to this battery life this year. Only time will tell, but hopefully they did something under the radar and the battery health this year will be much improved. But it looks like they're just using the same battery as last year. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, and probably the most important thing you're considering when it comes to buying this phone, that is the price. And if you're in the UK, I've got some good news for you. It's £50 cheaper than it was last year, and it's a much better phone. So overall, price is fine. It's $799 for the base model iPhone 15. You can't complain with that, to be fair. Now, we should absolutely get 120Hz for £800, but if you can get past that a little bit, this phone is incredible. And if you do want to go for the Plus model as well, it's £100 extra. Looking at $799 for the standard model and $899 for the Plus model. But yeah, overall, I think this phone is a massive upgrade from last year's model. I think it's important to keep in mind and not compare it too much from the Pro models. I think you've just got to look at the upgrades from last year's standard model, and I think that has been a massive upgrade. Yes, I know there's kind of a lot of hand-me-downs from the 14 Pro last year, but if you just look at year by year for the standard models, it's been a massive upgrade. With the dynamic island, with the brighter display, with the 48 megapixel camera lens, even the frosted glass back, I class that as an upgrade, and USB-C charging as well. I think it's a great phone, and if you're looking to pick one up, by all means, I don't think you should hesitate. But yeah, that's my iPhone 15 review. Let me know what you think down below. If you enjoy the content, leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.